Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser. Welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Now I'm joined with Krystal Hille, who is the founder of Hill House Publishing and Inspired Relations. She's an international speaker, best-selling author, and soul leadership mentor. But more importantly, Krystal and I connected initially as we shared a virtual stage through Wendy Corner's Your Words Have Power program last October. And I've now did a full circuit. I've had all the other speakers, Wendy and Jenny Vaz, on the show. So Krystal is the final one to have on the show to round out that amazing group of people that I was able to connect with through that, Your Words Have Power, virtual stage back in October. So it's really cool how that one event has really connected a lot of people. So Krystal, thanks a lot for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. Can't wait to dive into whatever unfolds.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Before we get started in the conversation, just introduce yourself to the audience. Who is Krystal today?
Krystal today is a woman who's passionate to empower humanity. And that's a big statement to make, but that is my mission statement, to awaken and empower humanity. And I'm currently doing that through publishing. Prior to that, I did it through coaching, which is a lot more obvious because empowering people is something I'm really, really passionate about, having gone through my own journey of having lost my personal power through an accident at the age of 4, and then kind of reclaiming it step by step, realizing how disempowered in many respects I really was and how the conditioning comes in, which we can explore. But really, the way I'm empowering way showers and thought leaders today is really by helping them birth their story that is dying to come out onto the page so that they can share their wisdom through their story and make a bigger impact in the world so that together we can raise the consciousness on the planet. That's really my mission. And I love the transformation that I see in my authors as they're diving into their story, writing about it, because when we write something, when we teach something, we actually have to really embody it. And that creates a greater clarity in our own mind, which we then can communicate with greater clarity, creating this more enhanced confidence, magnetism to attract more soul-aligned clients into our world. So it's this beautiful win-win-win for everyone. It's this beautiful journey of transformation, which is what I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah, I love that. And, when you spoke at the event that we met at, you did talk about the importance of storytelling. And obviously, that's something that, resonated with me. Obviously, I'm also an author like yourself. So that too resonated. And really, when you spoke about the power of storytelling and how you really go about helping people find, empower them, as you said, to be able to tell their story. What was it that, is there something in particular that happened during your life where you realized how powerful storytelling could be, or was it kind of a gradual journey?
That's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is my NLP training, when I was actually trained on how to craft stories to tap into the unconscious of the audience and to help them shift their, create a belief shift through the power of storytelling, and to really dive into that. Prior to that, it was just a lot more unconscious. I just knew that, I was a theater director, so I bring stories alive on stage, and for entertainment, but also for reflection, for transformation, for growth of the viewers. So I've always been aware in that sense of the transformational power that storytelling holds, because we actually never, when we are the listener, we're actually never listening to the story of the storyteller or the writer. We're actually listening to our own story reflected back to us through their words. And so what I love about this, knowing this then, gives us as storytellers and writers the power to really create a powerful impact and create a transformation, because the deeper we go into our own journey and to our own story, the more we process that and the more we tease out the wisdom, that the hindsight that comes from our life's journey, the greater transformation we give the reader.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, you know, most of what you do is, again, through these kind of collaborative works, multi-author books. And, you know, kind of, I really equate that, again, a lot to, you know, everyone that we met in that group, you know, and that was a small group. You're dealing with a much larger group. But when you kind of see, you know, as each of us spoke, there was kind of this, you know, common theme and this, you know, like-mindedness. So as you get all these authors, you know, kind of again in the room, so to speak. You know, there's this common theme throughout your books, but coming together from all these different perspectives. You know, what is that process like for you to see it, you know, to be able to kind of orchestrate that and see it come together? And then I'm sure a lot of these authors then again make connections with each other for life where, you know, they do other collaborative work down the road. But for you as the orchestrator of it all, how does that feel, you know, as you see it come together?
It feels amazing. And I selfishly choose themes that are alive within me, that are something that I feel like I would like to embody in a deeper way. So, for example, I just after I had a divorce and I left my husband, I wrote this book, or created a book title called Fearless Presence. How do we courageously step into who we are? And so I gathered people that resonated with that title and that had stories to share of how they embodied their fearless presence. And in doing so, it actually activated me. It gave me a deeper embodied sense of self around this topic. And so that's what it does for me. Each story that I'm getting to edit and read and help them to shape, to make it the most powerful, most transformational, most engaging story, impacts me as well. It
Yeah.
it enhances me as a person, and that's what I love about this work. Not only do I help the authors, the contributors, to really dive into their story and crystallize it in a way that they may have never done before, but I also get the transformation from their story.
Yeah. And it's funny how you said at the beginning, as you started to explain that, you said selfishly. Honestly, I don't think that's selfish at all. I think it's genius because, you know, how could you orchestrate it if it wasn't a topic that resonated with you? You know, like if I couldn't see how you could put it together if it was something that was completely, you know, out of your realm. So I just think that's genius to be able to put it together and, you know, be able to be a part of it and see it come together. I think
Mm.
that's really awesome. Um, and I know, you know, you've got a history of being in a lot of different places. Originally from Germany, you spent some time in the U.S. Now you're in Australia. How has that just benefited? You know, being in all those different cultures, benefited and shaped you as a human being. You know, in general, just experiencing all those because those are, you know, three totally different places that I named just there where you've been.
Yes,
You know,
there's actually a fourth one, the UK as well. I was in the UK
that's
for
right.
11 years as well. So it's four different countries that I have, spent a significant amount of time with. The US, only 9 months, but still, you get to really know and be embedded in the cultural archetype in a way that is the US. I think it's really helped me to broaden my understanding of people. I feel like I can relate to people from the UK in a way that, maybe I couldn't if I hadn't lived there. Same with the Americans and Australia as well. Very different. But yeah, I feel like I can relate. I know Walmart. I mean, I think everybody knows Walmart these days, but like here it's Kmart, in the UK, I've forgotten what it is there. But so, these intricacies, I can, that does create that connection. It's just one of the things. But the other interesting thing is actually what I really found interesting is the dialect, because in the UK, the wording, they speak quite crisp and clear, and the whole country is quite not claustrophobic, but everything is really compact, right? Like it's a lot of things crammed into very small places. Whereas when you go to Australia or America, there's more of a spaciousness.
Mm.
And you can hear that in the accent. It's more broad. And that's what I found fascinating. And then with German, the German language is I find the English language is more of an emotional language. You know, that you kind of come more into your emotions, where the German language is more of a heady language where you have to, because the verb is at the end of the sentence. So you have to train your mind to have a whole sentence in your mind before you speak it. Whereas in the English language, you can meander a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And that again has an impact on the psyche. And so knowing the differences then also means I know how to, culturally, it took a little while. We were coming to Australia. It was a bit of a culture shock because in Germany, I'm very used to, we make a time and we make it now and we stick to it. Whereas in Australia, it's like, oh yeah, well, we'll catch up sometime. I'm like, yeah, when? I had to learn to relax and just let it be.
Yeah, that's funny. And it's, it's interesting, like just listening to your accent, like there's times where, I can pick up on the German and then it's like, wait, is that a German accent, or wait, is that an English accent, or is it an Australian accent? So it's your accent kind of goes through these waves of where
It
where
does.
it's going. You're kind of meandering through your
Yes.
accents.
I am very musical, so and I can adapt quite easily. So, if I speak to my friend in the UK, I actually, or just thinking about it, I can tap more in. I'm not doing it on purpose now, but I can I can tap more into it. It happens unconsciously. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it that inspired you to do, the collaborative type of books, to do a multi-author book? Because I mean, there's a lot of background work that goes into that. I mean, you have to kind of make sure you've got the right team of authors who are going to be able to put this out, because you know it's, at the end of the day, it's still, Hill House Publishing is still on that cover, so they're, representing themselves, but they're also representing you. So what was it about wanting to put together multi-author books that sent you down this path?
I never really thought about it that much. It was just, I almost fell into it. Like in my life, I've always followed the guidance that I've been given. I'm very in tune with, with my guidance and my body. Like I was in two multi-author books in 2020, and I really loved the experience, because what I loved about these multi-author books is there was no competition between anyone. On launch day, everyone was cheering each other on. We were celebrating one another. We were raising each other up in the expertise that we had. And I just really loved the collaborative aspect and the group aspect of this book of books. When the opportunity then came up to train in this myself, my whole body just tingled. I had these truth tingles. I was like, really? Because I was, at the time, I was a life coach. I was helping, and I had to rebrand because COVID had shut down all of my events that I was running around the country. And so I thought I was going to help people to step into their confidence and stand up and speak up. But that's exactly what I'm doing now. I thought I was going to help them emotionally overcome their imposter syndrome and the fears and people pleasing and the perfectionism and all of that. But it it became so that now the books become that vehicle. And what I find is that with a clear intention and a strong title, it's a self-selective process. Like the right people come, and each book, I've done 7 books now, each book has its own personality. And because I do weekly meetings with the authors where they really get to know each other and create collaborations and, as you said, lifelong friendships and business ventures together, we create a cohesive field, like an energetic field around each book. And they inspire each other to go deeper as well into their own journey. Somebody brings something up in a meeting that sparks somebody else, like, oh, now I know what I need to write about. So it's this really collaborative way, even in the way that ideas get sparked for individual chapters. And that's what I love.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, isn't that the way that we should be operating anyway? Where we should be lifting each other up. And that's one of the things that I love about the podcasting community, is so many times I've interviewed, a fellow podcast host, and you know after the interview, whether I'm on their show or they're on my show, we'll always lift each other up, and there's times where we've connect each other to other guests, where after a show we're like, hey, I did an interview with this person who would be great for your show, or vice versa. And that is really, the way we should be going about life in general. It's not a competition. Like the society has built this thing that, like, there's winners and losers, and there really isn't. So, to for you to be able to kind of put that together and, you know, see it in real time has got to be incredibly special. You know, I know we talked a little bit about that as the orchestrator, you know, initially how it comes together, but you know, on like launch day when everybody is there, you know, and you've kind of, you know, it's like it almost feels like the finish line, but it's really kind of the starting gate, you know, as
It
well.
is.
So
It's
there's
like
all
the
this
birthing
energy
of a
and stuff
baby,
happening.
right? It's the
Yeah,
finishing line of the pregnancy and the creation process, and now we're birthing it into the world. And yeah, I feel like a proud mama bear every single time, because the authors are just, you know, and every time we're so excited. We're so excited to share these stories. And then there's a bit of nervousness and, oh my God, what will people think of me? And then they're just held because I do a lot of I do guided journeys, and I activate, you know, the expert status so that we can really release any traumas or any fears around that added, you know, that extra exposure. And so it becomes this beautiful celebration. And it shows, I feel like I work a lot with the energetics. And so in the last launch ceremony that we did, we spoke our intentions for the book and for the world. And then we invited a sound healer to sing those intentions into the grid line, you know, the ley lines of the world, and just visualizing it all kind of spreading across the globe. And it was just so beautiful. And it actually, having never done that before, that book did the best ever in all of the books. So I really feel like there's a correlation. And yeah, it's a day of celebration,
yeah,
celebration of achievement, and then really sharing that and contributing something beautiful to the world.
yeah. That's very cool. And you just started the publishing not too long ago. You'd say 2020
I
is when you kind of shifted into that.
Yeah, 2021. So I've just had my second birthday, and yeah, we've been going pretty consistently. And so you see all the books behind me here. If not in on the audio, but we've done 7 books now, and I'm currently doing Beyond Certainty, which is still open for enrollments. And we've had thought leaders in the books as well, like Dr. John DeMartini and Laurie Ladd, who's well known in the sort of spiritual community.
Yeah, and I mean, to publish 7 books in 2 years. I mean, that's incredible. Again, for you know someone who has you know published their own books, like I know what goes into this, you know, and and again, you know you're coordinating it with so many different you know people. So I really got to ask, like, man, how did you do that? I mean, 7 books in 2 years is just, I mean, that's crazy. Like, how did you do that? I want to know.
Okay, look, I mean, from the creation perspective, everybody only writes a 3,000-word chapter. So it doesn't take that long. So we usually give authors a month to write their chapters. Um, the majority of the work so far has really been in finding, you know, bringing people together into the projects. That's what takes the time. But I'm also now collaborating with lead authors who are, you know, heads of organizations or other people. Like I'm doing a collaboration with Wendy Corner that we how we met. So she is doing her Your Words Have Power, and I'm the publisher for that. And she's brought her community to me, and we're collaborating on that. So that's another way how it can happen. And yes, I have systems and processes in place in the back end that Jenny Baz helped me with, to really set all of that up so that I don't have to think about every step. It's all just there. I just need to show up and say, okay, what needs to get done today? So it takes the stress out of it because it's all just there. You follow the system.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, you're being very humble because that's an accomplishment, I can tell you for sure. So, what is that? I don't know if interview process is the right term, but you know, as you're out there finding authors, so that's probably the most difficult part of the process. So, what is that like to make sure that this you know this author is going to you know be the right fit for the book that you're working on?
So I always have a conversation with each person who's showing an interest and asking them, like I'm very very purpose driven. I'm asking them, what is their intention for themselves? Why do they want to write this book? What will it give them? Because I need to know what do they want to get out of that? And then what will it give their business and the reader and the world? So we talk through all of these things. They share with me their story and what they want to write about. And when I usually get the tingles. I'm very kinesthetic in that way. Like when they say something, oh, that, and then I have my yes. I don't even have to, it's not even something I have to do with my head. It's just a resonance. But of course, I listen to their story. And as I said, usually they self-select. I've only ever said no to one person.
Wow. Wow. So they're really, the right people are coming to you, whether you're, willing that or whatever. I mean, it seems like you're very spiritually grounded from the conversation. So, when you talk about you have the tingles, just how much are you relying on, that, again, whether people want to call it the universe or God or, your gut, your intuition, how does that play into it? If you go a little bit more about, in detail about the tingles.
So I don't know when the tingles came at some stage as I was releasing more of my personal, baggage. I work with intention. So every morning I have a morning routine where I set my intentions for the day, and I'm actually calling people in. Like I'm saying, this is how I'm here to serve. This is the vehicle. This is what I'm offering. So I take myself out of the picture, and I really just see what is it that, how can I serve today? How can I and bring the people to me that I can serve, that I can help to, that are ready for what I have to offer. And so then I take that trust, then that's done, and then I go about my daily activities and I back that up with action. I don't just rely on manifesting and I sit there all day and no, I set the intention,
If it was
I
just
put
that
it out
easy.
there energetically. And then it's like, okay, how can I show up? What podcast can I go on? What summit can I be on? What message do I want to share on social media? Who can I connect with? Who can I ask for a referral? So it's very much about connection. That's for me, that's the new way. I have never done any paid advertising. I don't believe in that necessarily, although I do believe that sometimes people find you when they're meant to find you through a post. The other day, I had a friendship request on Facebook. I reached out to her and I just shared a message, and she's now in the book. So it's like, the right time, right place, or right place, right time is very much a principle, and it's trusting that when that intention has been created and set really powerfully, that the universe will answer and will create these synchronistic moments. Somebody might be on the podcast right now thinking, oh my God, yes, she's reminding me I need to write my book. Maybe I need to reach out to her. Maybe she can help me. We just never know, as long as we show up in anything we do.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get to this point where you trust that process? Because I know for me, it's still, even today, there's days where I'm pretty good at it, and there's days where I'm like, I'm not there yet, So,
oh, look, I have my days too. I won't lie. I think we're in a human body. It's a constant
yes,
process because the bills have to be paid, and there's this and the other. And it's about this practice of just coming back to purpose,
yeah,
and to this knowing that the universe always has our back, and everything that happens in our lives happens for us and not to us. Even the most challenging things. And I think, yeah, I've had my fair share of challenging moments when the only thing I could do was to surrender, because I couldn't work it out. Like there was, sometimes you have so many problems thrown your way and so many challenges, especially, with me, it was about going through my divorce, that I just put my hands up and say, okay, I don't know what to do here. I'll hand it over to you. I'll hand it over. I have no idea. And it's in those moments where, some people call it the dark night of the soul, where it's actually the easiest to surrender because we have nothing to lose.
yeah.
It's in
Isn't
those
that the truth?
moments when, yeah, it's when we think we're in control and we could do something, that's when it's the hardest to surrender,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, but just coming back to that daily, for me, it's the daily practice, it's just to remembering that I am a co-creator. I'm co-creating my life every single moment. And that then gives me gives me a calmness, I think, and a certainty just to show up and come back into service. And yes, I'm not always there in either. I have to remind myself. That's why it's a daily practice.
So, when we shared that stage with Your Words Have Power, and again, you were kind of in that whole theme of storytelling. You actually told a story during your presentation about something that happened to you when you were just 4 years old, but how much that affected you throughout your life. And if I'd like for you to share that with the audience here, because I think it was a pretty powerful story, especially something that happens that young. How it impacted you for such a long time. So if you please honor the audience
Yeah,
with that story.
absolutely. So I'll contextualize it that in my work, I always look at voids and values, which is something that I'm borrowing from Dr. John Demartini, who says our voids create our values. That which we perceive as absent in our life, in our childhood, is that which we give the greatest value to and which we strive for. So while I'm sharing my story in the true sense of the word, that we hear our story reflected back to us, I invite the listeners to really just think about their own story, because my value is empowerment, and so that was the void that was created at the age of 4. So what happened is that my baby brother had access to a open hot water kettle that was standing on the coffee table, and he kicked it over my chest. And so I had second-degree burns all over my chest. I had to go to hospital for 10 days naked and in isolation because there was the danger of infection. It was quite a large area. So that then created all sorts of patterns and traumas. I could feel the trauma of my mom, the guilt. She was guilt-ridden, and I could feel it, being a very sensitive, empathic girl. I could feel it. So I said, I don't want to burden her with my pain. And so I internalized it and froze it. So, literally froze it, literally suppressed it. So it wasn't ever processed. It was just stuck. There was suddenly, I was afraid of absolutely everything. Of the trees moving, that they fall over, giants coming, getting me, like everything I was so scared. My taste buds changed. My mom said, get my favorite, when you're coming home from hospital, what's your favorite meal that you would like me to cook? And I shared it with her, and I didn't like it. My taste buds had changed. So it's incredible how much that can impact us. So I lost trust in the world, trust in adults, and it created a deep control pattern that I had to control my life and I had to hold on tight. And so it created this really, it made my life quite hard, On top of that, there were other patterns layered in about, in order to be safe, you have to fit in, you have to people please. And so that created more disempowerment. And I also believe, being quite spiritual, that we have past life unresolved things from past lives that we carry into this life. So they need an activation through a traumatic event to be able to be activated so we can resolve them. So I felt like all of that was compounded on top of it as well. And of course I had no idea. Like I said, I just knew that I was quite an introvert. And so it was that journey of, especially starting in my 20s, really realizing, life is really hard. I'm holding on so tight, there's no flow. I've just talked about you distrusting the universe and flowing. I was the exact opposite. I was controlling absolutely everything. But it has been that journey of, lots and lots, 20 years of personal development, and just unlayering the layers and releasing the layers of control, and stepping back into trust, and getting these tests and challenges where you have no choice but to trust.
Yeah. That's incredible, to really do a 180 from being a person who had to control everything, to really kind of understanding that flow. I mean, are there times now when you look back and are like, wow, I've come a long way?
Oh yeah.
Me too.
I was the person in class who would never put her hand up until I perfectly worked out sentence for the answer. And then I would get annoyed that people always would beat me. Why do I never get to say it? Well, because you're too slow. You're doing it in your head. Just put your hand up and do it and improvise. I couldn't do that. So to now be able to have a conversation on a podcast and just share freely without any preparation, yeah, is beautiful and very liberating.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. It's very cool. It's a very cool process. And you know, it's funny for me, like as I look back, you know, even with everything that I've gone through in my life, like I wouldn't change a thing. I literally would not change a thing. That the different times of hurts and pains and stuff like that. It's what makes us, who we are. And I think sometimes people want to try to, protect themselves from those scars and stuff, but you know, and maybe it's just something that comes with age and experience where, you get to a point where you're proud of every scar that's on your back. You're like, hey, take a look at them because there's lessons within every single one of those scars that's there, and I wear them with pride at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And they make us who we are, and they give us the stories and give us the wisdom that we then can pass on, so that, I would say our story has not been in vain, because what we have learned now we can pass on to the future generations, so that they maybe not have to do it as hard as we do. And I can see that in my children, like the awareness I give them and they now have, and the emotional maturity and the ability to, like, it's phenomenal. I didn't have that as a child. I had to learn that. But because it's now embodied in me, I can pass that on to them, so they don't have to do it the hard way. And I know they have their own lessons, but they don't have to repeat mine because I've already done that. And
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing with that is, as much as we try to control that and make it easier for them, we also have to accept the fact, like you just said, like they're gonna do their own stumbles and they're gonna fall down on their own because they've got, we all learn differently. I mean, there's similarities in all of it, but at the end of the day, we all learn differently. So we've got to be willing to to also be able to let go. And when they do make those mistakes, not be like, hey, look, I told you so. It's just like, hey, it's what did you learn from it? I mean, my mom told me when I was a young parent that God only requires us to do two things as a parent, and that's teach our children how to walk and how to walk away. And she said the second one is a hell of a lot tougher than the first one. And that's something, she's been gone now, going on 20 years, but it's something that sticks with me, my entire life. And that is the toughest thing as a parent is, you do want them to learn from our mistakes, but we also have to understand that they're still going to make mistakes. They're still going to fall. And, we can be there to help them pick up, but we're not going to be able to keep them from falling. It's just not the way it works. So,
yeah, I really like that. Teach them to walk and walk away.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot here, Krystal. Is there anything that we missed that you think would be valuable to the listeners before we get to our final question?
I think when it comes to storytelling and when it comes to life in general, I think the encouragement that I have is to listen to the whispers of your soul and take courageous action, because magic lies outside of the comfort zone. And especially when it comes to writing a book, which is not something life, it's not urgent. Like, it's not something that will change your life. Well, it does change your life, but it's not survival urgent, is
Right.
what I mean. So it's a luxury in many respects, that it's the nice to have. But if you have that calling to share your experiences, to share your story or your expertise, listen to it, because it's the universe whispering in your ear. And yeah, it's to really just take that courageous action, find a way to make it work. Because whenever I've listened, magic has happened, and I've come to my next level of expansion. It's that taking that courageous action and jumping into something, knowing that there's, like, the parachute. I always use the parachute. When I moved from the UK to Australia, on pure trust, like, it was rationally total. We didn't get into that story, but it was totally untrust, and I had no financial backup. I had to land on my feet. I had to. There was no other way, and I did, but I didn't know that I would. So the parachute only opens after we've jumped out of the plane. There's always
Yeah.
that moment of free flow, right? There's always that moment of uncertainty. And so to embrace that and to trust that it is going to open up, that trust that the universe is working in your favor, and just to listen to the whispers of the soul to take courageous action, and to write that book, that story, if that's where what it is, or leave that job or that husband or that wife, if that's going to give you that next level of expansion. Just come into alignment, because that's what the world needs right now.
No, and that resonates a lot. Again, as someone who sold their house and all their belongings to live in an RV and travel across the country, I can definitely resonate with what you're talking about just take that jump, and the parachute's going to open. And that's a very, very good way to put it. So Krystal, how do people find you on the internet? If there is anybody out there who's listening, who's kind of teetering with that, hey, am I a writer? Is it something I want to do? And or just to reach out to you and talk about the process. How would they find you on the internet?
So I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. These are my main prime ones. Krystal Hille is the name, Krystal with a K, Hill with an E at the end. KrystalHille.org is my website, where we've got all of the programs that we're offering, the next multi-author book, solo books. And let's just have a conversation, because you do not have to be a writer to be an author. You just have to have a passion for your message, and we take care of the rest.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, Krystal, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People, Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Krystal does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
I would say it's being aware of my state of being, by doing my morning practice. When I'm in a peaceful state, when I create that environment for my children, that's how I make a difference for myself, and I can then show up to my clients and to the world from a place of peace and inner centeredness, which will activate that in other people as well. At least that is my wish and my hope and my desire.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. Krystal, I really appreciate the time. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, or actually my dog's most recent book, 4 Paws and 6 Wheels Across America, my first venture into a children's book genre. And if you want to pick up any of my other books, they can be there on my website as well. Krystal, once again, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
You bet.